Get ready to go anywhere.
All right. Great, good afternoon, everybody. We'll call this committee of the whole meeting to order on Tuesday, September the 10th. It's 5 p.m. And Mr. Carter.
We will begin this meeting of the Committee of the Whole by acknowledging that we are meeting on Aboriginal land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples from the beginning. Long before today, as we gather here, there have been Aboriginal peoples who have been the stewards of this place. In particular, we acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, and Haudenosaunee peoples.
Thank you very much. Item 3.1 is the adoption of the agenda. It's moved by Councillor Card, seconded by Councillor Crapper, that the agenda for the September 10th, 2024 meeting of the Committee of the Whole be adopted as presented. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest?
Oh, sorry. I didn't think of that seriously. Yes, I do. I'm going to declare on,
7.2.
7.2, yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else? Okay, very good. So we're going to proceed into closed session. So for the public, we have the fire chief with us today, and we're going to receive a briefing and have a discussion about issues that are best held in camera. And so it's moved by Councillor Crawford, seconded by Councillor Card, that the Committee of the Whole proceed into closed session as permitted under the Municipal Act to consider the security of the property of the municipality. I'll call that question. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Peter. Good, ready when you are. Okay, then we'll call the meeting back to, we're back in open session. It's moved by Councillor Card, seconded by Councillor Crafter, that committee met in closed session to consider the security of the property of the municipality. The committee took no action beyond receiving the information from staff. All in favor? All right, then we're moving on to 7.1, which is planning application for to lift part lot control. That's moved by Councillor Crafter, seconded by Councillor Card, that the committee of the whole receives a report entitled Planning Application to Lift Part Lot Control, and that the committee of the whole recommends that council approve the part lot control application as presented at the September 3rd committee of the whole meeting. Any discussion on this? Is Steve with us?
Yep, he's online, but that should read September 10th, sorry.
Right. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, just, I appreciate that I knew what part lot control was because of the education of Steve that came over the last year, and that this is a normal and natural part of the evolution of getting already approved lots dividable and sold to people buying them. So, you know, as I see that confirmed, but.
Yes, you are right. There's really, because we approved what we did at the last meeting, the variance, this just moves ahead, and it's part of the process to finalize the property definition, I guess. Mr. Pence, did you want to, if I really butchered that, don't tell me. But did you want to help me out at all, or do we kind of have the right of it?
Thank you, Mayor Jones and committee members. I guess I just wanted to make sure you understood that what part lot control is a very routine process that is used to redivide blocks of land on a plan of subdivision to permit the transfer of individual units. So if you think of a block of land that was previously approved under a plan of subdivision and designed to accommodate a townhouse or a semi-detached, any sort of form of attached housing, each of those units cannot be sold individually until a part lot control application has been filed and part lot bylaw passed to enable for those new lot lines to be put down to divide that block into its smaller pieces to enable the transfer. And so it's a very standard process. And it's being done at this time for the remaining blocks in the Rice Farm or phase 2 of the watercolors development. And it's those blocks that were approved for either a semi-detached form of housing or a 3-unit townhouse form of housing. And so if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer the questions, but I just thought it was worth just kind of reminding everybody what that application is all about.
Yeah, thank you. By reminding us, you remind the public who's probably also have some questions. Anything for Mr. Pence coming out of that? No? Okay, thanks very much then. I'll just call the question then. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome. Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, I know. All right, so we are at 7.2, which is somebody has that, or maybe that's got stuck in my file somewhere differently, but it's, I've got it, it's just misfiled. Which is Leeds County OPP Detachment Board Member Remuneration. It's moved by Councillor Aragona, seconded by Councillor Cardy, that the Committee of the Whole receives a report entitled Administration Leeds County OPP Detachment Board Member Remuneration, and that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council approve the remuneration rates for the Leeds County OPP Detachment Board as presented. Everybody just want to say no way?
He's looking pretty sharp.
Thank you very much.
Or,
Thank
as
you very much.
Councilor Curtis says, thank you very much. I'll call the question up. All in favor? Carried. All right, 7.3, your Public Works, which is in relation to the CSRIF grant stream number 1. And moved by Councillor Card, seconded by Councillor Crapper, so this is just to accept the report, that the committee of the whole received the report entitled Public Works CSRIF Stream 1 for information purposes. Any questions? Councillor Crapper.
One to Peter, to Mr. Evans through you. You've mentioned, Peter, that although the grants for $1 million is gonna cost considerably more than that, do you have a sense of how much more than that?
So,
Go ahead.
through your worship, so the current refitting for the GHG study was a project that was also north of $3 million total. These would be the components that are directly dedicated to extending the lifespan of the existing plant itself. So our job is to get these projects in the can and ready to go. This is a subset of a large project that we've been working on for some time.
And just as a follow-up, as I understood it from the greenhouse gas study, et cetera, there were other sources of revenue that we're tapping into or hope to tap into for much of that as well.
And through your worship, that is correct. We are exploring any and all opportunities to fund the facility.
Yeah, great, thanks.
And just a reminder, our procurement policy is very restrictive if you're a member of staff. And there will be, unless it's a budgeted item, things will become back across this table as well. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. 7.4 is the annual D51 update. And it's moved by Councillor Crapper, seconded by Councillor Card, that the committee of the whole received the report of the manager of Public Works entitled Public Works D51 Update for Information Purposes. Applause. Go ahead, Councillor Cardy.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This seems to be a magic number that floats around. Everyone holds on to it with great importance, and it's changed now. And can you attribute anything or tell the public why that has changed so much?
Thanks very much. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So through your worship, I kind of look at this a little bit like when we're looking at the and the name escapes me, but the level in the lagoon, freeboard.
Free
We
ball,
used to
my
look at
goodness.
that
Free ball.
all the time, so apologies for the flashbacks, your worship. And so this is starting to become the same idea. We know that we've been working on influent infiltration. And some of the previous reports have identified the specific jobs that we've done to help with that. But basically reducing extraneous flows that shouldn't be in the system to start with has allowed for that early and midterm growth is what we've been looking at.
As an opportunity too, to pat the public on the back. Because some of this was minimal, was voluntary in the early days. So that was taking illegal sub pumps from pushing clean water into the system. And sustain it. And, you know, you'll see some development now where there was a hose running out to the street, that now they're burying it, and, you know, they're taking care of it into the stormwater instead. So great work from Public Works. It's an important indicator to us on the effectiveness of Public Works management of this, but also let's congratulate the public for doing their piece as well. Councillor Card, and then
Through your worship, the number of if I recall, it's like 0.51 cubic meters. How does that compare to other municipalities? Are we better, a little bit worse? How are we standing?
So through your worship, it varies wildly. I would say even at 0.51, we could be a little bit higher than average. The numbers that are used for an engineering perspective are in the 0.3s and 0.4s. Some of our peaking factors will go up higher than that, but we're still a little bit higher, but it's not so much a reflection of the population or the village beyond the fact that this is the era of water infrastructure. So we are not so bad that every rainfall is anymore doubling and tripling our system, because a lot of this 0.51 is still extraneous flows. We still see increased flows in the spring. We still see increased flows after the rain. And I agree, and the public has been fantastic for supporting this project. And we have a few more left to tackle, but
It assures me that as a counselor in the village, that we're on the right track, that it's not some wild number that's, you know, that's gonna, if it changes, there's a good chance it'll be smaller, not bigger, so, I think that says a lot for our public works department and our citizens, so kudos.
Councillor Cracker.
Two questions, one related. So one of the numbers I get asked a lot about is, and I don't know where it came from, was 1.9 people per dwelling or something like that. Is that something we determine? Somebody determines that for us, and further, do we periodically assess its appropriateness for our town?
Go ahead, please.
Of course, so 1.9 or any number for people per households is used more by the planning side. So for us with the D51, there is two different ways of looking at it, it's number of people and number and the amount per household. This D51 does not have any impact by the number of people we say in the household. It is purely the fact that we have X number of connections and we see Y amount of flow and divide X and Y or Y and X. So and maybe the unasked question is, because we monitor this daily, regardless of how much flow we are currently at, the 0.51, if you will, instead of the 1.9, as we see that get used up, we'll approach our capacity faster or slower than projected. We know that new houses use less water than the existing system, which includes household water, existing I&I, and other water flows that are not always there in new systems. So that's why I like the freeboard example is we go back to what we're looking for this and what we're using it for.
Yeah.
And we're just using it for projecting what we see now, and it will continuously evolve, regardless of the number of households that is here or the number of people that are within those households. Every day we have an idea of where we're going with this. And we always assume that we are at the minimum and we only go up from here, even though that hasn't been the case in the last few years.
And my second thought is related to that. I mean, we talked about early in my time in council, this whole, when you're at 80% of capacity notion, and I wonder if it might be helpful, because people, well, that means we can build 100 and whatever it is, 237 new homes. We don't want to get to 100%, obviously, because things like rainfalls increase, things will happen that, because these are assumptions. And so perhaps thinking about the 80% of our capacity might be helpful to ourselves and our public, because that's really our comfort zone. Gives us some risk management leeway, and we're not aiming to build 237 homes and get 100% and then go, holy cow, we have zero room. I think what I've heard is that when you get to 80%, you take a deep breath and have some accountability for assuring ourselves that, you know, we're not going to ever be above 100% by holding still at 80. Am I accurate with that?
You're close, but no cigar.
Ah.
But Mr. Everly, but close, but it's where, it's not so much us at 80%, it's the ministry, but I'll let Peter, dive in.
Yeah, so through your worship, so in council sets where we're at with what we're going to do about wherever we are. If we're at 10% capacity, well, council's probably less inclined to do a lot, although maybe look at the fact that everything was over-engineered and over-designed. The Ministry of Environment, they start asking at the staff level to start, what are we doing about our flows when we're 80%? So when I started here, we were approaching 100, maybe drifting over 100% of rated capacity. And so the Ministry of Environment asked what we were doing about it. The options are relatively limited, but what we were doing about it was we were tackling I&I. And that as long as the village has a plan, that's the extent of the ministry's kind of hard requirement until we start seeing some growth and some development. And then we're relooking at this going, okay, what is that growth going to mean for servicing capacity? And the formula they use is the D51. So they make this public available. They use this formula for determining where you're at. Now, once you're over the 80% capacity, one of the other things that you could and should be doing is something like an EA. So you're actually studying the problem, creating a plan that can handle growth should it exceed on this amount. but also show that as your system ages and I comes back, gets worse, we lose public support. We still have a plan regardless of growth for what we're gonna do about those flows when they start creeping back up. Because again, this is assumed that this is the bottom and we're only going up from here.
Thanks, Peter. Good. Anything else? Okay, something else I wanted to say, just because you twigged me there. So we thank the public for their involvement, we thank Public Works, but I also wanna make sure that we recognize the point of time when Mr. Evans came to work for the village. And it was, our relationship with the Ministry of the Environment was not good at the time. And they were, quite frequently on site, doing their work and their inspections. And just as you heard Mr. Evans give you a pretty frank explanation, over the last 5 or 6 years, our relationship with the Ministry of the Environment has improved significantly. And it's because when they ask a question of Mr. Evans in Public Works, they get a straight answer. So I don't want to miss that point. When Mr. Evans was hired, that was one of the first conversations that we had, is we need to improve our relationship with the ministry, and we have, so well done. All right, so on that, for the D51, I'm gonna, unless anybody else has got a question, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, through you. Peter, you mentioned age, I think, of the system, so if you could just put that in context, can you give us an idea of where exactly we are in the life cycle of our system?
Good question. You might not be answering.
So,
Go ahead.
Your worship, well beyond my retirement, we've got a good system here, actually. It's approaching 50 years old. However, the materials that were installed in the village are actually lend themselves to their long lifespan. I come from municipalities with a wider variety of components and pieces. And what we have is a system that easily has 75 years of life in it. However, there's no reason not to expect that some of those pipes will last into the 100 years. But one of the nicest things to work with the materials here is everything we have is kind of repairable, maintainable. I've come from systems where there's many more joints, everything gets misaligned. It's just dig up and replace. Here we've been able to primarily fix infrastructure, bring infrastructure, renew its lifespan via surface work where we can run cameras and crawlers and injectors down in. So we're still in the midlife of the system, and with on the collection side, I think many years left. I know many years left.
Were you inquiring about the LSSDS though, instead, or were you talking about the
I was
pipes?
talking about the whole system that we are using, but sorry, when you were answering the question, to answer your question, I'm assuming that I was assuming that you were including the LSSDS in that, because we're gonna be talking about that later in the agenda, so.
I think I missed the mark then, and I appreciate it. So the LSFDS, it is brand new.
Okay.
So it does have, I'll say a design lifespan that's a little bit longer. They're not as common in Ontario for something this size. We've worked with the ministry to try to get us some records, some information to help us out. But just, no, that's just the disposal side. Our treatment side is also 50 years old. It's in less good shape. It needs some investment in it to extend its life, and we're working on that, of course. But it also should have a long lifespan while properly maintained and running through. So it's not a good condition as the pipes and the collection systems where the influent infiltration is.
Yeah.
The treatment side, we're a mix of 50-year-old and 10-year-old system, approaching 10, less, but we're approaching early and end of life for some of our treatment system.
Right.
End of life still being years, but not decades without work.
But my understanding is there's some expensive work to be done sooner than later at the LSS.
Without question.
Okay, just want to leave them with a butterfly and happy thoughts. Yeah, you go ahead.
Says we're at the treatment system. Subsurface is just is disposal.
Yeah.
That's new, it's working well. It says work at the treatment side, so the lagoon cells.
Yeah.
Okay,
Open up the door, yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Peter, I come back to the connection number. And as Councillor Cardy mentioned, this seems to be a magic number for a lot of people in the village that they latch onto. So given what you just talked about and the comment that you made earlier about that we're at the bottom and we can probably continue to go up, how much stock should we be putting in that connection number and how exactly should we be looking at that number?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. It's something I try to explain anytime I get it. Because it's hard to, it's hard to say this without sounding too flippant, because it's the complete opposite of what I mean. The number of connections is, if it's not right on the money, it doesn't really matter in the long run. Because if the 0.51 is wrong, let's say, and I could say that, well, we know the 0.51 is not exactly what every household uses, because every household uses a different amount. So if the 0.51 doesn't happen to be the average, and the average of the next houses, maybe they use 0.6, maybe they use more. Well, then as we continue to monitor flows, the D51 will just drift back down as we run. Now, we know that in reality, it's the other way around. We were expecting, this number to get a little bigger before the growth starts to eat away at that. But if we are incorrect, we monitor that daily. We run through these we have a really good idea of where we are going in the future. So it's, that number, I'm sure it's plus or minus 5. It's not plus or minus 50. But even at plus or minus 5, as we continue to run through these iterations, they only get more accurate, more realistic for what they run through. And that's probably the hardest thing is, I think it was alluded before. It was one thing 6 months ago and now it's another, and then it'll continue to change over the days, months and years as every time we open that box and look at it, it's gonna be a different number.
And just to wrap this up, this time is coming to council or committee and they'll go to council because there's also an annual requirement to report to MOE.
So
So this is, they may hear other numbers, but we are coaching staff to stay with the official number that goes to the MOE. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all good? I'll call the question then. You've heard the motion, let's call the question. All in favor? Carried. All right, this is a public works as well. Seven point five is moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragona, that the committee received the report entitled Public Works DWQMS Third Party Audit Agreement, and that the committee of the whole recommend that council authorize the CAO to enter into an agreement with SAI Global to provide accreditation services until 2027. Any discussion? Go ahead.
So as I read this, is through your version, is this continuing? I know this is one evaluation we're gonna have here, and it makes sense to me to use somebody that's familiar with what they're doing. When this contract's up, will we immediately start another one with the same person or somebody else? So there'll be 3-year contracts ad infinitum, is that?
And barring a significant change in regulation from the province, this will be a contract that goes on forever. And note there are very, very few providers of this service. So SAI Global is one that does everyone I'm aware of entirely. They do the vast majority of these audits. So they don't have the market completely cornered, but this will likely be a renewed contract forever. And it can't be done in-house, it's got to be done by one of these few bodies.
Okay, Councillor Crawford.
And $5,600, I was banking on it. I didn't look at the numbers at first. I thought, okay, here goes another $20,000 thing. That's not a bad price for a company that is, in essence, ensuring that we're compliant with something that's mandatory and so important as well.
Go
So
ahead.
one thing council's been extremely helpful with is getting some of those pricing down. So I've ranged some of what we can do in-house and not having to employ third-party contracts for every little component in this. We've been able to bring the price of this service down quite a bit over the last few years.
Good.
It's good. All right, I'm gonna call the question then, all in favor? Carried. Very good. All right, so 7.6 is Public Works as well, moved by Councilor Aragon, seconded by Councilor Cardy, that the committee of the whole received the report entitled Public Works OTF Accessibility Grant, Library Accessible Entrance for Information Purposes. Any comments?
I'd just like to say that it's about time. I mean, it's, that front entrance has always been a liability in my mind, for slips and falls, and we have so many seniors that use that facility. The existing ramp is pretty much useless.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a great thing. It's gonna happen, and it'll open that up for a lot more people.
For sure. Do you have your hand up? I thought I saw it in the corner of my
I
eye.
just, no, I can just
Oh, good.
reiterate Councillor Kurt's.
Okay, Councilor Crawford.
I know I've been around for the conversations recently, but any thinking about how, given that the ramp's going up in essence between the information center and the library, is that right?
Yes.
Of how you do a picture of how the information center and the library kind of can over time be seen or evolve into a facility that serves multiple purposes.
Chris, that's not on the agenda tonight. That's just the ramp, right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of a picture of what could
Visioning, maybe
happen.
we could vision another way.
I can visit with Peter separately.
There you go, there you go. Anybody else? Call the question and all in favor? We carry. Very good. Public Works again.
Hmm.
7.7, the pre-budget approval for a truck. Moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragona, that the committee of the whole received the report entitled Public Works, pre-budget approval plow truck. And that the committee of the whole recommend council authorize staff to order a 2025 turnkey plow truck at a cost not to exceed $250,000 plus HST, using the canoe procurement program to be purchased from the 2025 budget. So canoe, can you just give like a 3 sentence on canoe and then I'll open it up for questions?
So canoe procurement has been a program that's done by an AMO subgroup, local authority services. They've actively worked to find ways for municipalities to save money. One of the best ones, in my opinion, has been the canoe procurement service, where they engage a company who does a lot of the tendering, vetting and getting the best prices. And what it does, it opens the door to small municipalities who might have one-off equipment needs, and whether that's from salt to $1 million fire trucks. And they really ensure that the municipalities are getting the best price. And it helps us bid at the same level or achieve the same pricing as any larger municipality. The village has used it a number of times to save thousands of dollars. It saves us a ton of time, saves us effort, and opens up pricing to us that we wouldn't be able to get on our own.
Okay, thank you. And they do, they already have all the quotes done so that it passes procurement. Okay, questions? Councillor Card and then Councillor Aragon and Councillor Crawford.
Through you, your worship. It seems that we've stepped up 2 steps here in our selection of equipment at $250,000. Can you describe, are you looking at a 5-ton truck with a plow and a wing? Is that where we're going? Single axle?
Go ahead.
So 5 years ago, that would be in the neighborhood of a 5-ton truck. That is another F550 type series, similar to what we have now. The prices have gone absolutely through the roof. The 5-ton truck with a plow and the wing, looking at other municipalities that have bought similar units, are north of 400,000 now. Without many of the options. Single axle with a large wing, and to be honest, looking at ways to try and increase road network while maintaining the same level of service throughout the village, while plowing more roads and meeting our minimum maintenance standards without having to add multiple trucks and multiple staff to the same event. We've been looking at a truck that had wider clearing width for some time. It was originally thought that these smaller trucks, nothing really was on the market for wings that would hold up. We were at a trade show this year, where we met with one of the suppliers and they demonstrated a product that was a much better quality. And kind of opened this back up to us because I was worried I was gonna be coming back to council with a really demonstrated need to be able to increase that flying width for a truck that's significantly more expensive. So I was really happy when they came back with an option that was of a similar size to what we have now. So we're not asking for a big tandem that's running the highways. We're asking for a truck that is a similar size than ours, a little bit better equipped and equipped in such a way that it covers our minimum maintenance standards better than what we have now, at a reduced price relative to what those other prices are. The pricing has gone through the roof.
So the point of my question, I guess, was, that truck, an F-550 or similar, they're gonna run around a Super Duty basic model around, and I don't know what the discount is to Canoe, but around $120, so I'm assuming then that there's over $100,000 worth of equipment on it, so like, there's some kind of Dickie John or something like that. I know I've seen the wings, they look like they work great and all that kind of stuff, but I was just interested in the cost for the accessories to put on the basic truck, and so you're thinking around 115,000 or something like that for a plow, a wing, a sander, and some kind of control for applying sand.
So
Go ahead.
So the truck as it sits right now is between 115 and 135 out the door. What this truck has, there's a few different things. For the 250, it's expected that we'll have a dose monitor. However, that's only about $13,000 of the total price of the project. What it has is instead of having an electric contractor grade poly sander in the back, the bed itself is dual purpose. So it'll run material, salt, sand, snow, gravel. But it holds the material within itself. We don't have to load and unload a contractor poly plastic sander with electric. It actually runs over with hydraulics. It allows the material, instead of coming off the back and to be broadcast across the street where a significant portion of our material either skitters off the side or doesn't stay after the first few cars, it drops it on the crown of the road where it should be. And that conveyor that feeds it right in the bed. So we end up holding a lot more salt or sand. We end up dosing a smaller amount at a direct point where we want it on the crown of the road where it's gonna work its way off. And that added box itself, the added wing, and then some MMS tracking for GPS and dosing monitors. That's the nature of the next, going from the 130 to 230 really,
Yeah.
where we are plus some.
No, that answers the question, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was over here. Councillor, one of the councillors.
For you, Madam Chair. Peter, just a question in terms of, is this a new vehicle? Does it make sense to look at used options? Or do used options exist, and why or why not would we look at them?
Go ahead.
So used options are very few and far between. We've talked to a number of neighboring municipalities who ran into, when they offloaded their used materials and they had their own piece of equipment break down, not being able to find equipment or going out trying to chase those down. I don't have an issue with used at all. I think there's some opportunity there, and we have purchased used equipment in the past for the village. My issue with this being a used unit is those municipalities that have a bigger fleet can afford to have their equipment go down. So for us, I would strongly recommend that 7 years is the max for the equipment that we're leaning on the most. It's great to keep a piece of equipment for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. However, when your primary vehicle is over that 7 years, as the existing truck is approaching, we are worried about the reliability, worried about when that vehicle goes down. Because even the new ones will go down for a day here or there, but we're worried about how frequent it's gonna go down. If you take a look at our existing truck, we run straight salt, and the county runs straight salt for most of their storms. We deal with corrosion. We do rust proofing, we try to keep them clean, but there is significant corrosion. We had, a simple case of, we had a battery fail, a battery replace, and due to some wiring issues and originally thought to be mostly related to corrosion, our truck was down for 3 days. in a winter event, we might, maybe could have reduced it to a day and a half or two. But in the winter, in the middle of the storm, when these go down, I've kind of outlined the report that having some level of redundancy is gonna be really important. And having a front run plow truck that's responsible for dose, being over 7 years, is quite a bit riskier, and it's a really common number. I like the bigger fleets that have a lot of redundancy, they can have 12 or 13 trucks for 11 or 12 routes, and one can be down all the time, or two can be down all the time while their mechanics work on it, but we don't have that luxury here, unfortunately.
Okay. Councillor Crawford.
I think both of my questions may be through you to Kim. The first has to do with timing. I'd be a lot more comfortable with this discussion if we knew what our, we're gonna learn, I guess, this fall around deficit and planning for payment, but, because that will then give us a sense of risk that we don't know about right now. Can you fill me in on where we're at with that? And could we not be waiting on this decision to have the information about, what we're gonna get from the auditor?
Sure, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The reason this report's before you now is due to the waiting time on ordering. I think it's, what is it, just under a year? The trucks are being, you have to order a year in advance, and they're not being delivered for
Right.
just under that. That's why it's before you now, and it's consistent with the 10-year capital plan that we brought forward last September at this point in time. And so that's why it's before council right now. Mostly it's due to the back order time is why it's.
My question, I guess, is more about when would we have an opportunity still be ahead of the game with this, but have the information that you're preparing to bring forward around our financial situation?
I'm not quite sure.
How far off are we on that, getting the information about our,
Well, so
from the
the,
auditor?
thank you, through you.
Go ahead.
Member. The audit starts the week of September 23rd, and therefore the report will be rendered somewhere in the neighborhood of fourth quarter of this year. And so again, that's why this is before you ahead of that, is to ensure we can get it ordered and it can be delivered on time, or as we require it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And the second is about the relationship between, in some of the financing that Mr. Evans puts forward, and the idea of development fees being helpful in this, but I know that that bylaw is being developed. How far are we away from that? And have you done analysis that leads you to think that those development fees will indeed be helpful in providing the dollars that we would need for this kind of purchase?
I know it's off the agenda, but a quick update on development charges. Is a truck eligible as a development charge? Yeah, go ahead. We're gonna answer that for me.
So,
If that's a yes, then answer the second part of the
Second,
question.
so, generally speaking, yes,
Okay.
large pieces of infrastructure that are needed for growth, are eligible for development charges. I think that's a simple yes.
Yeah, so then where are we at in relation to the DC study?
So thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. We are collecting data right now to give to Watson and Associates to
Okay.
get that work done.
Right, thank you.
Because as a follow-up, if development's gonna pay for development and development charges are going to help us have the equipment we need to be a larger community, then I'm all in favor. If it's not, then I struggle with it, given our financial situation as it sits.
Thank you. Councillor Craig.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I guess through, our growth, I know we would be opting maybe to keep the truck we currently have. So is there a possibility to run 2 trucks at one time in case of a huge event or like a big storm?
Go ahead, Peter.
Your worship, without a doubt, we've kind of aligned the sidewalk machines, the same method, is we'll have them both ready to go at all times. However, if one's down, then we are able to still operate at our minimum maintenance standard. But with those, the goal would be is both vehicles would be in service, the majority of time.
Councillor Gordon.
Through you, your worship. Peter, just logistics, as related to finance. What is the financial commitment that we have to make in order to put the order in? Is there a deposit required, and how much is it?
Go ahead.
Your worship, so no deposits required from municipalities. We make these orders as a general rule. We're dealing with companies that work with municipalities every day. The order is placed, the commitment's made, and there's no deposit requirement. It's due on delivery.
Very good.
Could I clarify something then?
Go ahead.
So that, maybe that's where I'm off track. The budget that this would have a bearing on could be how far out?
Go ahead, 26, 27. Go ahead.
25, it would be, so we're expecting that it would be delivered within the 2025 year. Hopefully just ahead of winter time, where we do expect to see some increased network, and we'll be going into 2 more winters with the existing equipment that I noted, like I touched on a little bit in the report. Keeping that sander going more than anything, has been a little bit more challenging every year, as we would completely expect. And not to get into like too much in the weeds, but last year or the year before, we had a plow, catch a manhole and destroyed the plow on the truck. We were lucky, we had the loader as a backup plow. We don't have a backup sander. And right in the middle of a snowstorm is about, you don't want to be going looking for a sander any more than you would want to be looking for a snow blower. We'd be looking at the end of 2025, and we're keeping things going.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, anything else? All right, so we heard the arguments. Another comment? Go ahead.
And just a comment, I think that Public Works is on the right track. I mean, if we're gonna grow the village and we have to grow the supporting equipment for that. I mean, at one time that would have cut a lot of oohs and ahs, but $250,000 kind of surprised me, but when Peter describes what he's getting for his money, it makes a lot more sense. I'm definitely behind the times on prices and that kind of stuff, but he's described a basic truck with some pretty deluxe equipment to go with it that should serve the village well for times to come. So I think it's a good move. And the financing end of it, that's yet to be determined. So we have a year to be creative with our financing and determine the proper way to do it. So I think the equipment's necessary, and we just have to find a way to make it happen.
Thank you, and although it's only worth 13,000, I mean, I, for many years have had concerns that we don't have a way of gathering the data on the dosing. And so we've been fortunate, no lawsuits have come our way, but I'd like to be in a better position should there be a lawsuit or an issue in the village that the operator can report with data when the sanding was done, when the icing was done. We don't have that now, and we're one of very few municipalities that doesn't have that opportunity.
One last comment on I hear that there are a variety of reasons we need it, and I don't disagree at all. On the financing, because it is partially needed because of growth, I would assert that it needs to be largely, or at least equitably financed by growth.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get there. It sounds like it'll all come together at the right time.
Yeah.
Study, money, and the check. All right, anybody, anything else? You're all done? Okay, then I am gonna call a question on this. All in favor? Carried. Your computer must have gotten it. 7.8, Public Works. And this is straightforward, subsurface wastewater disposal investigation. As moved by Councillor Aragona, seconded by Councillor Cardy, that the committee of the whole recommend council receive the report entitled Public Works Subsurface Wastewater Disposal Investigation. And that the committee of the whole recommend that council engage Greer Galloway Group to complete a study to evaluate the area within 5 kilometers of the village in a southerly direction for an LSSDS at the cost of 18,000 plus HST with 15% contingency. Any questions? Go ahead.
Just to say again, I'm echoing Councillor Crapper's comments on one of the other projects. What we're getting for $18,000 seems quite reasonable. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of moving around and it's going to be a task, but the $18,000 does seem quite reasonable for what we get.
Fair enough. Anybody else? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carry, please. Public Works. 7.9. It's moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragonen. The committee of the whole received the report entitled Public Works Technical Steering Committee Update for information purposes. This was expected, it's just finally putting it in the public domain that they're on, what's the word?
Yes.
That, okay, until something changes. And that goes with the previous report. We'll call the question, all in favor. Mr. Chismore, 7.10 is a summary of our summer 2024 programming and recreation. As moved by Councillor Aragona, seconded by Councillor Cardy, that the committee of the whole received the report entitled Recreation Summer 2024 Programming Summary for information purposes. Please, someone have a question for Mr. Chismore. Go ahead, Mr. Councillor Cardy.
How do you do such a good job?
Yeah.
Chris works day and night. I know he doesn't keep track of it ever, so, he works closely with FOTA too. We're trying to improve the arena. And he's more than accommodating and taking on a lot of the legwork for some of the things that we want to do. Some of the programs he's developed and some of the things he suggested for improvements have, made a huge difference inside the arena and, impressed a lot of people. I guess that'd be the way to say it. The people who go in the arena now are quite impressed with the way it looks and the way it functions and the organization in its entirety. So I think hiring Mr. Chismore was a good move for council.
Was a good move for us, yes. Anybody else want to say something? All right, I'm gonna call the question, all in favor, carried. And that's a fabulous sign with Lockwood mushrooms. All righty, now we're moving to motions and resolutions. 8.1 is the LaSalle Causeway closure resolution. Moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragona. Whereas Public Services and Procurement Canada report to damage and resulting closure of the Bascule Bridge section of the LaSalle Causeway in Kingston in the spring of 2024. And whereas the PSPC is planning to install a temporary fixed bridge in the former Bascule section of the LaSalle Causeway in Kingston until such time as a permanent bridge can be installed. And whereas the implementation of a fixed bridge is in direct contravention of the Canadian Navigable Waters Act, specifically the reform in 2018. And whereas the PSPC has announced a timeline of 2 to 3+ years until the permanent structure will be finished. And whereas this closure has already had a devastating impact on Rideau Canal vessel traffic, thereby reducing tourism in our communities and putting the future of not only the Rideau Canal operations, but our local economic health as a whole at risk. Now therefore be it resolved that the Committee of the Whole recommends that Council for the Corporation of the Village of Westport hereby calls on the federal government to install a structure that will enable all marine traffic to pass through the LaSalle Causeway commencing at the start of the 2025 Rideau Canal navigation season. And further that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Minister of Transport Pablo Rodriguez, MP Mark Garrettson, MPP Steve Clark, MP Scott Reed, PSPC representatives and Parks Canada, the Honourable Premier Doug Ford, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Comment? For anybody that's interested, the procurement division or whatever their official title is, just yesterday issued a video and it's available on YouTube about their, the path forward for that bridge. So I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I did notice it. It was, said it was just issued. So it would be the latest, up to date statement on what they plan to do there. So it is available on YouTube.
We have a meeting, is it tomorrow? Could you slip that to Kim and I, just so we could see it before we're meeting with the other
I'll find
affected
it
Rideau
again.
communities? That would be great, thank you. So that's sort of the background piece as well. Malcolm, the mayor of Smith Falls and the CAO, and our CAO and myself, we've kind of driven a Rideau Canal group to put forward these sorts of things. Kim and Malcolm authored much of this. And I think there was 9 mayors that signed off on a letter that has gone to PSPC Because their original plan, so I'll be interested to see the video. The original plan that we heard is that they were going to have a fixed bridge, however, there was a piece that they could take out every once in a while to let the taller traffic through. And for millions to take it out to let people through, the vessels through. So that's why the wording was, we don't care what you do, we're not telling you your business, but we need to ensure that all marine traffic can pass through at the beginning of the 2025 canal navigation season. So we'll see where we go, but if we could look at that, that would be great. Any questions about this? Okay, then I'll thank you to Kim, though, for the extra work that you took on for this. We did go to a couple meetings and had nice snacks as well. That's Smith Falls, they really do have nice snacks. All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. All right, and so now information items 9.1 and 9.2. The motion is just moved by Councilor Aragon and seconded by Councilor Cardy that the committee of the whole receives the information items for information purposes. Unless there's any questions on any of those. All right, call the question then. All in favor? Okay.
Don't ask after.
Did you have a question?
I was just wondering if, through you, if the schools have been notified or the daycare for the touch truck event.
Mr. Jarvis?
So we were just waiting for after this meeting, so we're gonna start poking and prodding and pulling on some other pieces of equipment we can get down here and get into the schools. We just wanna make sure that it came across the table here.
Thank you.
Do we have a date? Is it in the report?
The 8th of October.
Thank you. And just to the vote, call question. Okay, any notices of motion today? Any announcements? We have a couple of things planned. Kim, did you want to update on 25 plus and Serenity?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. The village has planned a business appreciation, I guess we can call it a ceremony. It's scheduled for September 24th from 4 to 6 in the council chambers. And there are about 10 to 12 businesses who have been in operation for over 25 years. And so certificates will be granted to these businesses and recognition of their contribution to the community over the course of the years.
Right. And on that, if you could look at the list, and so when it comes to giving out the certificates, I prefer you to do it. So figure out, who do you know, who's the business people, and have a few words to say when you give the certificate. So we'll make sure you get that list in good time, and thanks, Kim.
Yep, no problem. So again, through you, Madam Mayor, happy to report the Serenity Garden project is finally coming to a close. We are planning the unveiling for September 29th, which is a Sunday, at 1:30 p.m. And so the mayor will say a few words. We'll unveil the plaque from the people who donated the money, and have some light refreshments as well for about an hour at the Serenity Garden.
It's good. So if you're available, that would be terrific if you could join us. Or any members of the public, for sure, we'll be putting a bit of an announcement out so they can.
Mhm. Yeah.
Any other announcements? Hockey season's just about to start. It's already started, exhibition game the other day. Season, we're looking forward for a great season. Councilor.
Should we comment on the door knocking plan, Mayor Jones, or I don't know if that's been communicated already, maybe.
I think we've talked, I don't know, so, but if not, you'll find as, for the public, this is a time, as an opportunity for councillors to check in with the public through a variety of means. Councillor Aragon and Councillor Crapper and myself have chosen to knock on some doors, and we probably won't get to everybody, but we're gonna do our best. And it's not, it's always nice to do this at a time when it's not an election campaign underway. It's really just to check in. How are they doing? How are we doing? And bring some feedback to council. Our strategic plan is due to be updated, so we're gonna use the information that we learn by speaking to the public to help our strategic plan. We've also got these other two events that we're talking about, the business celebration for 25 plus business owners in the village, and I'm sure we'll get some people out to Serenity Gardens. There's also September 30th, which is Orange Shirt Day. There's always a large number of people who gather in Lockwood. We'll get some timings on that. So there's lots and lots of times before the bad weather comes. That could have been Saturday for all we knew. Before the bad weather comes, for the counselors to speak to the public and really, the questions are, how are they doing? Have they got any concerns? And do a report card on us. How have we done? So, Councilor Carver, that covered?
And the survey as well will be redoing at some point too.
Just a couple of things, everybody remember that FOTUS drop dead date for the draws, the 27th would be drawn for a good chunk of money at the home game, first home game for the Ritos. And another comment on the Ritos, for anybody that's housebound or have aversion to cold weather in the rink, the YouTube broadcast for the Junior C games, I had the opportunity to watch one the other night. Very, very well done. Semi-professional grade. The announcer, I forget his name, but he's born to do that job, I can tell you that. It's the next best thing to be in there for sure, so take advantage of it.
Yeah, good plan. But it's more fun to come. Yeah. to come. All right, so that's announcement. Any questions from the public? Okay, questions from the media? Then we're at item 14, which is the adjournment, moved by Councillor Cardy, seconded by Councillor Aragona, that this meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the Village of